Sabrina 2000s comic, issue 76. Hilda goes in front of the Queen and sends fire at the monster. It's frustrating that he seems no worse for wear. What is he made out of? Why didn't she turn it to a frog, or freeze it in time? Why would she waste time sending fire at it when for all she knows that could catch the grass on fire and ruin the whole place? That's the worst spell she could possibly cast in this place, and she's experienced. She tells the Queen to use her magic. Let me guess, she can't. Wow, I can't believe I actually guessed that. Hilda sends a beam at the monster, and she says she'll have her guards take this creature away for examination. Hilda wonders where her guards are, and can't understand why she did nothing to protect herself when she's the most powerful sorceress. Hilda thinks that the Queen is accustomed to having others protect and serve her, and forgot how to do anything on her own. That's stretching it. There's still thousands of different spells she could have cast in seconds, instinctively. And she thinks that if something happened to the Queen, the realm would suffer. Let me guess, she's wrong. Because she doesn't exactly strike me as competent. So why would she think anything would suffer? She's replaceable. A monster tells Celeste this is a warning, and she came dangerously close to telling Hilda something that she shouldn't hear. Why doesn't she just point at this gray guy and instantly kill him? At least that's explained later. The story is stupid. I can't take drama in a Sabrina story seriously when it's so over the top and melodramatic. The bad guy has to deal with her. I called her Celeste, by the way. Instinctively, I'd think it would be spelled with a C, because Celeste, the Final Fantasy character, that's the only way her name is memorable, so it's easy to make that mistake when you remember it. It's not like he's immune to magic. If that's not explained, then this writer should have no credibility. Why doesn't she go up to him when he's asleep and do something to him? Like, use a magical artifact on him. This writer's an idiot. Shinji wastes my time telling Sabrina about his plan to finish what his parents started, and go figure, she refuses. So that wasted a ton of panels. Sabrina then wastes a ton of my time angsty in her head. She really is like Samus and Other M. This isn't a novel. She doesn't want to talk to her family about this because they'd ask too many questions, so she goes to Landra. Sabrina thinks that if she tells Landra her and Shinji's secrets, she'll realize that she really values her as a friend and trusts her. The truth about her family is go figure the sitcom backstory. Go figure her parents divorced because her father's a warlock. Then, something new's added, because when she got home from kindergarten, she saw the woman in the purple dress and her mother was gone. She's told that she found out her daughter was a witch and ran away. I'm guessing this woman's evil and can't be trusted and killed her mother or something. Especially since she would have told her how she felt if she hated her for being a witch. And she hid her powers from her. Obviously, this backstory completely contradicts everything in the franchise before this. Because she's a kindergartner, not 16. Although she was being raised by a mortal grandmother before her aunt in the 90s comic. Still, I hate this because it's too dark. Sabrina thinks that her parents abandoned her, and didn't just zap up replacement parents. I wonder if that's actually realistic, that a kid wouldn't do that. She wouldn't be able to think about something as complex as whether that's moral or not back then, would she? And she tells Landra the truth about Shinji. Landra wonders if the Four Blades had learned that the mana tree was somehow dying, and that was the secret. Of course that's why they turned on the Queen. Too bad they got themselves killed instead of just casting a spell to make the tree fine, or alter the Queen's memory, since already they were doing something illegal by trying to overthrow somebody. Sabrina's happy to get some cat food because it's normal, but I'm just bored by the panels after this. She apologizes to Salem for ignoring him, but I don't blame her. Sabrina screams at seeing Atticus Rex working at the pet shop. This wastes even more of our time. It's surprising that he even came back at all. Hilda tells her to grab an official medallion from her room, which is the same one that woman from her past wore. She wonders what the connection is. Obviously the one who retired from the council is that woman, because Hilda had to replace her. Sabrina 2000s comic, issue 77. It starts out with boring magic school stuff that's almost never worth anything. is really just there to have Sabrina talk to her friends. They're gonna get sent to an underwater city for a field trip. Ugh, how lame. It's Atlantis again? I saw that in the 70s comic already. You're not fooling me with a different name. And it's not gonna be as interesting as that is. This isn't creative, it's boring. There's nothing to say about the story so far. I just want to skip over all of this. It's just boring, mundane stuff and repetition. And you know you screwed up when you make magic school seem boring. I mean, why are they even bothering to send them to an underwater city for a field trip? What's the point? Isn't it supposed to be a school that teaches you about magic? The teacher's gonna cast water-breathing spells on his students. I guess the teacher thinks the students are too stupid to do it themselves, after all the time they've had magic. Can't just give them ear necklaces, oh no. At least Shinji apologizes to his friends for making them upset. Magical artifacts to make them breathe underwater would be better, more believable, because it'd save magic. Landra thanks them, and Sabrina gets bored of waiting and casts the water-breathing spell on her and her friends. Would she get in trouble for that for some dumb reason? Thankfully, he's just proud of her because it was an advanced spell. All she'd need to do is imagine an air bubble around someone that constantly warps more air to it as it leaks out. Why is Sabrina surprised that she's good at it? Come on, even Penders wrote a story about an underwater city. It's been done to death. How about a volcano city? The tour guide tells them a whole bunch of boring exposition about the place. Shinji's right, this is boring. Predictably, after someone's worried about them getting separated from the class, it happens. And Landra doubts that there's monsters inside and goes in. I thought she was the cautious one. Gee, I wonder if there's gonna be monsters here. Why don't they ask their magic where the class is and say a spell to warp to it? Witches have used magic successfully without knowing the necessary knowledge plenty of times, and even little Sabrina can do this. They see cave paintings predicting the mana tree somehow withering away. What a coincidence! It's easy to predict that that might happen at some point, but only if it was painted by someone who didn't have faith in the queen to do her job right. What a coincidence, the descendant of the person who painted them is waiting right here, and he visits this place a lot in the hopes of telling people about it. I don't care about typing about all of this world building because the art style and writing is lame and it's just Atlantis again. And I doubt it's gonna be a place that'll show up a bunch. If any of this exposition ends up mattering, then it'll be used in the actual plot progression. Why would weaving be done in secret and not respected? The guy's not allowed to paint the city because it's illegal. This place sucks. Does he mean it's illegal to make paintings? Why are the heroes still chipper after that? I hope he just means graffiti is illegal. Even then, there's still places where street art is allowed. Eventually, Landra tells him about the mana tree. So what happens to them all being opposed to telling anyone, even their teacher, about the dying mana tree? She's never consistent. And he says that the increase of monster attacks would make sense because if it's dying, then its magic is creating ill energy because it's suffering. Shinji says that must be the secret his parents knew about. His father was a soldier for the queen, but the tree dying implies that the queen isn't doing her job. The merman that they just met wants to help Shinji finish what his parents started because he wants his purpose to be painting the truth. And I'm reminded that the merman wants to date Landra, but he doesn't have enough of a personality. Sabrina reminds me his name's Nara, and says that the relationship could never work because he lives underwater. How in the hell is there no spell to let a mermaid live on land? How stupid does the writer think I am? Witches can do anything. I highly doubt the writer's an actual fan of this franchise. I doubt this even if all I ever knew about was a sitcom. Him mentioning the very idea of this just completely destroys the believability of their drama. Witches can shapeshift things. That's why they can summon things. She'd just turn him into a warlock. The story ends with them reuniting with their class without being in trouble. In the comedy page, Hilda answers the door for some talking animals and a pizza delivery man with anchovy pizza. And she says she hates ex-wizard poker night. She means ex-warlock. And this isn't creative. We've seen him do this before. A comedy page should at least try to do something new. But this writer comes off like a fanfiction writer. That's why there's only one story and issue in their story arcs. It's easy for an uncreative writer to write an arc because you can just keep using the same plot points and drag it out. Sabrina 2000s comic, issue 78. The writer forces Sabrina and Landra to argue again. I remember when they were close enough that they would hold hands like it was nothing. Sabrina has no reason to bitch about casting a water-breathing spell on Landra every day after charm school. They're supposed to be friends, remember? This kind of thing would take her only a second. If she really has other things to do, then bitching about this is wasting even more of her time. Landra kept lecturing Sabrina about being selfish. Sabrina's trying to look up transformation spells. How is there no spell that could give Nera legs? They can create anything. How in the world are very few of them permanent? That makes no sense. A witch's magic would just do what she wants. You don't hear about any other type of spell being temporary. Somehow, I'm expected to believe out of complete nowhere that it took all 7 of the council members casting the transformation spell in Salem at the same time to turn him into a cat. Nobody with a brain would think that. Everybody knows witches for being able to turn people into frogs. Who imagines that they'd need multiple of them at the same time to do that? Since when is it temporary? This writing is really stupid. It's so obvious they don't need to have this plot point for Nera at all. Sabrina feels used because Landra hasn't been spending any time with her. The writing is idiotic some more because it wastes my time reminding me about exposition that I already know. Sabrina says she can't believe Shinji was so calm when he was being told fake history. He's just happy that someone other than him knows the truth. Landra agrees to hang out with her at the festival. Hilda invites the 2 of them to a restaurant for dinner later and gets thanked for it. And they have a fun time boring me. This doesn't make up for anything Hilda did, like all the times she used Sabrina and made her do stuff she didn't want to do, because they could just zap up the dinner. Landra hits Sabrina up for a water-breathing spell again. Once again forcing conflict because there's no reason at all that she would be the only one who would cast that spell. Not to mention there's no reason at all that an ear necklace wouldn't exist. There was a story in the 90s comic where Sabrina and her little cousin effortlessly turned themselves into mermaids. Why doesn't she do that? Even when you consider what the witches are able to do in this continuity. It's so obvious that the witches aren't as underpowered as this writer thinks they are. So there's no reason to take it seriously. Sabrina's aunts invited Shinji to the restaurant, but he's just happy to get free food. He should say, "I'm just happy to get to spend time with you guys." After that boredom, Shinji thanks them for inviting him. And Sabrina thinks it's not like Landra to not show up, and randomly wonders if she's okay. I guess that means she's not. Sabrina asks her aunt to stay out later with Shinji, which bothers him. She just did that so she could look for Landra. Why doesn't she look with him? Fortunately, he's loyal enough to decide to go with her, and she thanks him. It turns out Landra was caught by a giant sea creature. So more bad writing. She's an omnipotent witch! She'd just turn into a frog or something. How about freeze time, or reverse time? Nera's magic alone wasn't strong enough to fight it off. How about shrink it to the size of an atom? I was under the impression that merpeople didn't even have magical powers. And as if that wasn't enough drama, merpeople usually hate humans. So I have a question. If merpeople know about witchcraft, then why didn't Sabrina just warp Landra to her if she was worried about her? That's what would actually happen. So they have to blast the giant monster with fire. At least it's realistic because it dies immediately after that. Good, but it wouldn't have taken this long. She thanks her friends for saving her after hugging Nera, which sounds like a girl's name. It's even worse because it ends in like Landra. So half the time I want to call him Landra. Then Shinji talks as if he hasn't already brought up the idea of forming a resistance with his friends before. Sure, it's convenient that the spy witches in council that knew Sabrina used spell freeze can't hear everything that everybody says. In the sitcom, the council confronted Sabrina personally the second she considered telling Roxy her secret. They agree to form a resistance and see fireworks as the story ends. So what plan could they possibly have? It's not like they could all be written to warp the council members to them and kill them or brainwash them. It's not like that's their plan or they'd do it. So the logical route is completely out, so there's no way of knowing what's gonna happen next. It's a Chaos Knuckles arc problem. I always assumed that the council members are enchanted against magic, so you'd need a whole bunch of witches at once to do anything to one particular member. That's a plot hole if it's never explained, but it has to be the case. So they do need strength in numbers, but what on earth is their plan if any of those spells I mentioned aren't their plan? Oh, let's just run at them and attack them like a real army would, when the council members have thousands of different spells they could use. Let's just totally act like mortals. So this story was about nothing, really. Shinji wastes our time telling Sabrina about his plan to finish what his parents started. And that's a waste of time. And come to think of it, everything else is just completely pointless. So this story was about Sabrina's magic class randomly going to Atlantis. And Lantra meets a merman and falls in love with him, to the point of telling him about the mana tree instantly while she doesn't even trust her teacher with that knowledge, who she knew a lot more because she's just that attracted to him. What is Shinji's plan? It's illegal to form the Four Blades movement in the first place, so at that point, why doesn't he just use a brainwashing spell on the queen to make her want to do her job? So what even happened in this issue? Landra got threatened by a monster underwater and didn't just instantly warp to Sabrina. I guess because she wanted to defend Nara. She would just point at the monster and do a billion different things to it and instantly defeat it. You know, I don't think the monsters are memorable looking. So yeah, nothing that mattered happened in this story, really. If they find more people joining the resistance comforting, why don't they just summon a whole bunch of people? Create people. Then they'd have an army immediately.